This is Poppy and Rye Chapter 20. Chapter 20 is called Poppy. The coldness of the water, its utter darkness, shocked Poppy. Not only did she not move, but didn't know which way to move. Instead, she sank, spiraling down. Unless she did something quickly, she would drown. She began to thrash wildly. Her frenzy got her nowhere. Still sinking, she tried to think herself into calmness, succeeding just enough to move her legs and arms in unison. Within moments, she bumped against some twigs and she grabbed hold. Her breath was giving out. Letting go of the twig, she clawed frantically upward and forward, hoping she would clear the lodge. Like a cork popping from a bottle, Poppy burst upon the pond's surface. Splashing frantically, she gulped great draughts of air into her hungry lungs. She looked up. Though water-logged eyes, she saw blurry bits of light. At first, she thought they were fireflies. Then she realized she was seeing stars. Never before had stars seemed so beautiful. She was out of the lodge. Now, however, she had to get to shore. She doubted her ability to swim. Flailing, she tried to make some sense of where she was. She did see what appeared to be other lodges, and she wanted to avoid them. As she floundered, she felt a bump in her head. Ready to defend herself, she whirled. It was only a chip of wood. Eagerly, she held on, and it kept her afloat. Clinging to the chip, Poppy kicked vigorously. She began to move forward. Her progress was slow. Her energy was ebbing. Now and again, she rested her head on the wood chip. She forced herself to think of Rye, caged in the beaver's lodge. At least I'm free, she chided herself and resumed kicking. 20 minutes later, she came to a lurching halt. In a daze, she looked up. Land rose before her. She had reached the shore. A weary Poppy stumbled out of the water. Once on land, she gave herself a vigorous shake, ridding herself of what felt like a ton of water. Much later, she lay down on the ground and cradled her head in her paws. Only then did she allow herself to feel the full depth of her exhaustion. Never again, she vowed, would she go in the water. As she lay there, she thought of the imprisoned Rye and reviewed her plan. She would get another vine, longer than the one that she had used, dropped it down in the vent hole, and she would go down again and somehow get Rye out of the cage. Then the two of them would climb out. There was no other way. As she wanted it to happen quickly, Poppy hurried up the hill. By the time she reached the boulder, the pink glow of sunlight had begun to bloom upon the eastern horizon. Birds began to twitter madly. It was as if the night of silence had been too much to bear, and there was a desperate need to make up for lost time. She considered the pond. As Poppy watched, a swarm of beavers emerged from the lodge where she knew Rye was being held. She studied them with intense anger. They were so large and powerful, and those teeth and huge tails. She hurried into the nest. The mice were astir, but moving about as though weighted by great burdens. No one looked up or around. Talk was minimal. Little tasks were being performed with minute action, and the family was preparing to move. "I'm back," Poppy announced. The mice paused in their work and looked around. "Ah, Poppy," said Valerian sadly, "I thought you had left us." "Not at all. I went to see Rye." "Rye? How'd you do that?" Curly Duck called out. Poppy told how she got into the beaver's lodge and of her subsequent visit with Rye. "He's not happy," she told them, "but he's all right." "But why did he even go there?" Clover asked. "He wanted to do something to the beavers." "Did he?" "No." Valerian's tail waved in agitation. "Why, that mouse must always be trying to prove himself. I can't begin to imagine. And now a prisoner, held for ransom, the ransom being our moving away. Well, we're trying to go as quickly as we can." "I do have a plan to free him," Poppy offered, and the nest became very still. "Miss Poppy," Valerian said, drawing himself and speaking somberly, "ever since you came to our nest, you've been telling and doing of some remarkable things. We don't doubt that you are an exceptional creature. Perhaps living quietly, simply by the brook, we've become a tad bit shy of difficulty. No doubt the beavers have unnerved us too, but the truth is," Valerian concluded, "it would be better if we just gave in." "Won't you even listen to my plan?" Valerian sighed. "I guess we can. You mustn't expect us to do anything." As Rye family stared at her with dull eyes and twitching ears, an uncomfortable Poppy stood in the middle of the nest, and she felt some anger. The mice had been generous when she told them of Ragweed's death. Now she was suggesting they do something to keep Rye from dying, and they were not so hospitable. I got into the beaver's main lodge, she told them anew, by using a vent hole and a vine to drop down inside. Unfortunately, Rye and I couldn't break the cage. I need more teeth or paws. I need a few of you to join me when I return to the lodge with a longer vine. Go into the beaver's lodge? Cried an alarmed mouse. Right, the way that I did. Wouldn't that be dangerous? Called another. Those beavers are so big and a swat of their tails. And what big teeth? Said another. One Biden. Goodbye. Poppy held up a paw to still the objections. I have a friend, my best friend. He came here with me from Dimwood Forest. Another mouse? Asked one of the youngsters. He's a porcupine. His name is Ereth. Porcupine quills are very sharp. My friend is always losing his. I'll get some, and then we'll go to the lodge and carry a quill to defend ourselves. One quill against all those beavers? Someone asked. Waiting for me up beyond the ridge. Valerian cleared his throat. Poppy, how many of us do you propose it'll take to get Rye out? Well, there's me, of course, she replied, but I'll need at least a couple of others. No one spoke out. It was Clover who said, Poppy, perhaps you could get Rye out, but what about the beavers? They'll simply go on building, and what will happen to the rest of us? I'm not sure, Poppy admitted, but I must free Rye. My dear, Clover said, I do wish I believe your plan will be helpful. I truly do, but no, I can't. She turned to Valerian. Do you? She asked. Valerian gazed at his feet. It seems awfully risky, he said gloomily. He looked up. And it sure will create greater danger for the rest of us. And no one spoke. Then, speaking gently, Poppy said, But as I understand it, you've not resisted them at all. Once again there was silence. Valerian cleared his throat. Poppy, he said, since this matter concerns the family, I think we need to talk this over. Privately. All right, Poppy said, trying to hide her disappointment. I'll go find where my friend is waiting, gather up some quills, and bring them back. When I do, you can tell me what you would like to do. I think that would be best, Valerian said. An angry Poppy ran up the entryway, took one more look down at the pond at the lodge where she knew Rye was being kept, and then hurried up towards the ridge. She had no trouble finding the cottonwood where she had seen Ereth go, but the porcupine was nowhere in sight.